May 10th, 2009. Melissa Payne and Vernon Johnson arrived home to Peggy Payne's residence at roughly 11 p.m. that night in Melissa Payne's convertible Jeep Wrangler, where they then proceeded to gaze at the stars, go inside, watch movies, and spend the night together. Simply be together. Little did the young couple know that the evening of May 10th would be the last moments that they would ever share together. Their adventures under the captivating yet enigmatic sky full of stars, their movie nights, their sleepovers would all come to an end the morning of May 11th when two gunshots plagued the home of 128 East Grant Street in Strasburg, Colorado. Members of the juror, today you will hear the appalling story that took place on May 11th, 2009, Mother's Day. You will hear that the mother of Melissa Payne, Peggy Payne, was abruptly woken up to the pervasive sound of two gunshots ringing throughout her house that caused an unprecedented malaise. Miss Payne immediately casted her vision outside, where she saw a young man identified as Vernon Johnson pacing up and down her driveway. You will hear how Mr. Johnson demanded that Peggy Payne call 911 because her daughter was bleeding out on the basement floor. That Miss Payne rushed to the basement of her home, where she was met by her daughter's lifeless body laying cold, fragile, dead, blood saturating the floor beneath her from the gunshot wound to her head. You will hear how Melissa Payne's sister, Tanya Payne, vividly recalls the riveting conversation that took place between her sister and the defendant. "If I ever catch you cheating on me, I will kill you. And if you ever sleep with Vernon Johnson, I will kill both of you." Those were the words that our defendant, Freddie Hernandez, aggressively promised to fulfill if he ever found that his girlfriend, Melissa Payne, succumbed to these actions. Today, you will hear how Mr. Johnson was left speechless after the murder of his good friend, and how he found Melissa Payne shortly after the defendant murdered her with a gun, carrying a 9mm caliber Smith & Wesson bullet, the same bullets that were located in the green Ford Taurus that the defendant used to drive to Tanya Payne's home, searching for Melissa Payne. The same green Ford Taurus that was seen by Peggy Payne in her front driveway just minutes before the murder of her child. The same green Ford Taurus that only the defendant and Mr. Johnson, the owner of the car, knew how to start. You will hear from Elaine Black, the love-struck mother of the defendant's newborn child, who was released from the hospital on the evening of May 10th after giving birth to this child. She will tell you that at roughly 2 a.m. that evening, the defendant fled, carrying a knit cap that was possessing a heavy object that took the form of a gun. She will also tell you that at 8:30 a.m. the following morning, the defendant returned home and then proceeded to wash all of his clothing, roughly an hour and a half after the murder of Melissa Payne. Additionally, the defendant rushed to the store to get Pepto-Bismol because he was having stomach issues. But why? Ms. Black will tell you that he took the medicine because he was, quote, nervous he would get busted. Members of the juror, it is my job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of this charge, and today you will be hearing from 4 witnesses attesting to Freddie Hernandez's malevolent murder in the first degree. You will hear how Hernandez willfully seeked out Melissa Payne on the morning of her death, and you will hear how he threatened to murder both Melissa Payne and Vernon Johnson if ever caught sleeping together. Members of the juror, you will hear how the 9mm caliber Smith & Wesson bullets that were found in the head of Melissa's dead body were identical to the bullets found in the green Ford Taurus that was initially on the scene of the murder but then fled. Melissa Payne was young, full of vitality and life. At the turning point of her life, far too young to die. Peggy Payne lost her daughter. The daughter she raised and worked for her entire life, her prized possession. Tanya Payne lost her sister, her best friend, her role model. But because of this malicious act, Melissa Payne has been left dead, never to be embraced by family or friends again. While here in court with us today, our defendant Freddie Hernandez sits free. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm Haley McPhee, and I will be representing Freddie Hernandez in this very important case. This crime is not a case where we simply have to prove Freddie is the killer. Rather, this is a case where we have to ask ourselves who really did it. This is a case about bad police work and many different stories that just don't make sense. My client Freddie is a ladies' man. He is certainly not someone you would want your sister to date, but he is not a killer. On May 11, 2009, Freddie was accused of first-degree murder of Melissa Payne. Freddie is not guilty. Freddie was wrongfully accused, and we should not stand for this injustice. On May 11, 2009, Freddie left Elaine's and arrived at the Cube, a bar he often visited, down in Denver at 12 a.m. Freddie is good friends with the owner Everall, so he was at the club all night long. Freddie drank so heavily that he had to spend the night at the Cube. Freddie woke up Sunday morning and left the club with Everall at 7 a.m. when the sun was shining. Freddie left to go see his newborn baby. Throughout this case, you will hear from many witnesses. You will hear from Peggy, the victim's mother. She will testify that the morning of the incident, she just had a bad feeling, then proceeded to leave the door unlocked and headed back to bed. You will hear from Tanya, the sister of the victim. She will testify that Freddie visited her home at 6 a.m. the morning of the crime, asking where her sister was. She will testify that she told Freddie that her sister is at their parents' house. We expect that the prosecution made a big deal about how Melissa told Tanya weeks prior that Freddie threatened her. Let's not forget that Tanya willingly gave Freddie the whereabouts of her sister. She gave the whereabouts of her sister to a man that just weeks earlier was told threatened Melissa. You will hear from Elaine, the mother of Freddie's child. She will testify that she saw Freddie put something in her bag that she thought might be a gun. The object she saw was in a winter cap. She will testify that she never actually saw Freddie with a gun. We will hear from Detective Garner and how he failed to talk to people on the scene, such as the victim's father and neighbors that could have been potential witnesses. Garner fails to investigate the other owner of the car, Faith Monet, who's Vernon's wife. You will hear from Vernon, who is Freddie's best friend. Vernon will testify that she was with Melissa the day and time of the crime. You will hear that Vernon changes his story multiple times, which creates much reasonable doubt towards Vernon and what role he plays in this crime. After these testimonies, you are sure to have many questions left unanswered, such as, where is the gun that Elaine claims Freddie had? Where is Faith, and why wasn't she interviewed if she's the other owner of the green Ford Taurus? Wouldn't it be common sense to interview the wife of Vernon, the woman who is being cheated on by her husband? She has just as much of a motive to hurt Melissa as Freddie would have. Why would Tanya simply give away her sister's location to a supposedly dangerous man? Why would Melissa's mother simply ignore a bad instinct and not lock the front door before going back to bed? Why would the detective simply not interview the dad who was on the scene of the crime or anybody else, such as the neighbors who might have been witnesses? Why would Vernon change his story so many different times? All of these questions are something to be greatly weighed and considered throughout the trial. These questions ultimately make us wonder if the prosecution is able to meet the burden of proof. These questions make us wonder if Freddie was able to get from the Cube to Melissa's parents' house in Strasburg in time to commit the crime. Did Freddie really even commit the crime if none of the witnesses can place him there? After the testimonies that are given, I am confident that you will have these same questions that I'm asking myself. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, keep these many questions at the front of your mind. Use your common sense and find the reasonable doubt behind the evidence. Remember that, as a jury, if there is reasonable doubt, if your common sense makes you doubt that Freddie could commit this crime, you have a legal obligation to find Freddie not guilty. This crime is certainly sad, but do not rush to a guilty verdict regarding my client. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you to find Freddie not guilty of this crime.
Good afternoon, Tanya. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you being here today. Please state your name for the record.
Tanya Payne.
I'm sure this is very difficult for you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions surrounding your relationship with Melissa Payne and the morning of her death.
Okay.
Tell me about your relationship with the victim, Melissa Payne.
She's my sister.
Were you close with your sister? Did you talk about things like your relationships and struggles going on in your life?
Yeah, I would say we were pretty close.
To your knowledge, was Miss Melissa in an intimate relationship with the defendant, Freddie Hernandez?
Yes,
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Please describe him and where he is seated in the courtroom.
He's seated at the table to my right, wearing a suit and tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant subject to cross-examination. Please tell the jury what Melissa shared with you about her relationship with Freddie.
She said she was often afraid of him, and Freddie had many other girlfriends, one of which just had a baby. I think her name was Elaine.
Did Freddie ever threaten your sister?
Yeah. I think when she told him that she had feelings for Freddie's best friend Vernon, he grabbed a curtain rod off and threatened her. He also said that if he ever caught her cheating with Vernon, that she'd kill him.
Specifically with Vernon?
Yes.
About how long before she was murdered did this happen?
5 or 6 months.
In your opinion, did Melissa take these threats seriously?
Yeah, she was scared that Freddie was going to find out about her and Vernon's relationship.
Did Freddie know Melissa and Vernon were in a relationship before May 10th?
No, I don't think so.
I'd like to bring you back to the morning of Melissa's murder on May 11th, 2009. What do you recall about that morning?
Freddie came over to my house that morning looking for Melissa. I told him that she was probably at our parents' house.
About what time did Freddie come to your house?
Around 6 a.m.
What kind of car was Freddie driving?
It was a green Ford.
Was there anything unique or identifying about the green Ford?
Yes, it had a white passenger door.
Was it normal for both Freddie and Vernon to drive this car?
Yeah, they shared it between each other often.
And have you seen this car frequently?
I have.
About how far away is your parents' house where Melissa lived from yours?
Only a few blocks.
Did you notice anything different about Freddie that morning?
Yeah, he was quieter than usual.
How does he normally act?
Freddie's usually very loud and animated. He has a big personality.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the jury?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Good morning, Miss Payne. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. My name is Priya Zaveri, and today I'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions.
Okay.
Could I start by having you state your name?
Tanya Payne.
Okay. Now, I first want to ask you, you don't like Freddie, do you?
No.
And you want the jury to believe that your story is accurate. Is this correct?
Yes.
Now, you state in your direct exam that you live a couple of streets away from your parents, right?
Yes.
So you would say it probably takes no more than 5 or so minutes to go from your house to theirs, correct?
Give or take, yes.
Okay. Now, you said you had a good relationship with your sister. Is this accurate?
Yes.
So she must have told you about relationships she was in, correct?
Yes.
Including the one with Vernon.
Yes.
Now, you also knew Melissa made threats to Freddie. Freddie had made threats to Melissa that he would kill her. Is this correct?
Yes.
Now, you state that Freddie shows up at your door at 6 a.m. Is this correct?
Correct.
Yet you still knew about these threats that Melissa had told you about from Freddie, but you still tell Freddie directly where Melissa's at, right?
Correct.
Did these threats not provoke you to call somebody?
No. I didn't think that it was going to be an issue. It was so early in the morning. I didn't assume that Freddie was going to do anything bad to Melissa.
Well, you didn't call Melissa to warn her. You didn't call your parents, and you certainly didn't call the police. You didn't call anybody, and you went straight back to bed. Is this correct?
Yes.
Now, you state that you had lost your best friend, and I'm assuming you love Melissa a lot. Is this correct?
Yes.
Now, do you want the jury to believe that after these threats had been made, you would do nothing for your sister, even though you said you love her? Is this right?
I didn't think she needed any help.
Well, you knew about these threats that had been made.
Yes.
Well, Miss Payne, I have no further questions for you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your name? Can you please spell it for the record?
My name is Vernon Johnson, Johnsson.
Could you tell me how you were connected to the victim?
I was in a romantic relationship with Melissa.
Do you know approximately how long you were together before she died?
About 5 or 6 months.
And can you tell me how you were connected to the defendant?
He was also dating Melissa at the time. We're best friends.
Could you tell me a little bit about what happened the night of May 10th?
Me and Melissa were together. She asked me to give her a ride to a friend's house. I was driving my car, but she asked if we could stop by Freddie's sister's house to pick up her Jeep. So I left my car. We drove back to Melissa's house. We got in her house. We sat outside stargazing for a while, just enjoying the view. We went downstairs, watched the movie. At some point, Freddie showed up, completely uninvited. He was really mad that I was there and that she was seeing me.
Could you tell me what happened next?
Freddie started yelling at Melissa. He was completely angry. She was yelling back. Freddie advanced onto her and he hit her in the head with the gun. Then he started waving it around wildly.
When Melissa got hit in the head, what happened?
She fell onto the floor, and before I could check on her, see if she was okay, Freddie shot her.
Did Freddie say anything to you after he shot her?
He looked me in my eyes and told me I owe him my life, and then he ran off.
What did you take that as?
He decided not to kill me too. I don't know why, but he wanted me to be sure that I owed him that.
Is this why you didn't initially tell the police what actually happened?
Yes.
Do you see Freddie Hernandez in court today?
Yes.
Could you tell me where he's seated and something that he's wearing?
He's sitting at the table to my right, wearing a tie.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant subject to cross. Do you recall Melissa's address?
128 East Grant Street in Strasburg, Colorado.
Can you tell me what county that's in?
Yes, Arapahoe.
What kind of car were you driving the night you picked Melissa up?
A green Ford Taurus.
Is there anything unique or interesting about that car that you need to know?
It's hard to start. Only me, Freddie, and my wife know how to start the car because you have to do something particular under the hood.
Could you tell me what you shared with the police during your initial interview following Melissa's death?
I told them that I was the first person in the room after she was shot. I woke up to a loud bang. I walked out to see her bleeding on the floor. The blood was coming from her head, and I shook her to try and wake her up, but she didn't move. I grabbed my phone and ran upstairs because it doesn't work in the basement. I saw her mom, Peggy, coming downstairs, and I told her she was hurt and to call the police, and her and her dad were attempting to perform CPR on her until the police got there.
Could you tell me who Elaine Black is?
Freddie's baby mama, his last girlfriend.
Mr. Johnson, could you please explain to me the conversation that you had on a May 11th with Elaine Black following Melissa's death?
I told her that I was there when Freddie came over to Melissa's, that they started arguing, and Freddie got angry. He hit Melissa in the head with a gun. He started waving it around her, and it went off, and he shot her in the head. That he was angry that me and her were dating, but he didn't shoot me so that I wouldn't rat him out to the police. And he told me that I owe him my life.
During your first interview, was there anything that you disclosed about Freddie?
I said that I didn't think that he shot Melissa, and that I was pretty sure that he would have been at the Cube all night on Saturday.
Was that because you were scared?
Yes.
Could you explain what you told the police during your second interview after the phone call with Elaine?
I told them that during a conversation with Elaine, his baby mama, that I told her it sounded like Freddie had really screwed up and he was the only person with a motive to kill her. I said that hypothetically, if Freddie was there and waving the gun around, it might have gone off accidentally.
And what theory did you share with the police?
I said that I believe that Freddie may have shot Melissa, but that he would probably blame me for it.
And between the 3 conversations that you had, the first interview with the police, the conversation with Elaine, and the second interview, which of these stories about the death of Melissa are true?
The conversation with Elaine.
Did you want to come here and testify today?
No,
Why not?
I'm scared of Freddie and what he might do to me.
Thank you. No further questions.
Hi, Mr. Johnson. My name is Muriel Hikomovich, and I have a few further questions for you. So, as you stated before, you consider Freddie to be one of your best friends, correct?
Yes.
As a best friend, you two spend a lot of time together and know each other well, wouldn't you think?
Yes.
You are also currently married to Faith Monet.
Yes.
While married, you found yourself in a romantic relationship with another woman, right?
Yes.
That woman was Melissa Payne.
Correct.
So, Melissa was also in a relationship with your best friend, Freddie, as well, right?
Yes.
So, let's make this clear. Not only were you betraying your best friend, you were cheating on your wife as well.
I was, but it's really hard to explain because it was Melissa and Freddie, they were already having issues and she came to me in the time of need, and it was really a true bond that we had.
So, the night before the murder, you stated that you were driving a green Ford Taurus, correct?
Correct.
Your wife is the registered owner of that said green Ford Taurus.
Yes.
The Taurus has to be started a difficult way, and you, your wife, and Freddie are the only 3 that know how to start it, correct?
Correct.
That said Taurus was seen at Melissa's home the morning of the murder, right? So, the night before the murder, you and Melissa were together, right?
Yes.
And that night, you ended up spending the night with Melissa as well.
Yes.
So, just to be clear, while your wife was at home, you were in bed with another woman.
Correct.
So, let's talk about your many statements. In your testimony that you just gave under oath in front of the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you said that Freddie abruptly came into the basement when you and Melissa were watching a movie and intentionally murdered Melissa.
Yes.
Later in your statement, you state that the reason you didn't come forward earlier to the police is because you were nervous you'd get blamed for the murder. Is that right?
Yes, and that and just me being afraid of Freddie.
But Mr. Johnson, wouldn't you agree with me that coming forward and giving information about a murder that you say you're innocent in would help you look not guilty?
Yes.
Before coming into court today, you've given 3 different statements, 2 to the police and 1 to Miss Elaine Black. And now, in your direct exam, just moments ago, is the first statement that you ever stated that Freddie came down and intentionally shot Melissa in the head. Is that correct?
Yes.
In the last minute of your direct exam, you said that the statement you gave to Miss Elaine Black is what you believe to be the true story of what happened on May 11th, right?
Yes.
But Mr. Johnson, I'm a little confused by your inconsistency because in the statement you gave to Miss Elaine Black before coming here today, you state that the gun just went off while Freddie was waving it around, not that he intentionally aimed and shot her in the head. Is that true?
Yes.
So, let's talk about your other statements before today. In your first statement, you told the police that you and Melissa were just friends, right?
Yes.
But wouldn't you agree with me that spending the night with her means that you were more than just friends?
It does.
So you lied to the police.
Yes.
In the same statement, you also told the police you awoke to a loud bang that morning. After awoken, you jumped out of bed and ran to the next room to see Melissa bleeding on the ground. Right?
Correct.
but you saw no one else around, right?
Yes.
Next, you said you ran up the stairs and while frantically running around half naked, trying to call 911, you still never saw anyone suspicious, right?
Yes.
So, in that statement, you did not see my client, Freddie Hernandez, at the scene that morning.
No, not in that statement.
This is your first statement to the police. Your next statement was quite different. Let's dig a little deeper into the statement you gave to Miss Elaine Black, the one that you say is true. You told Elaine, Freddie's girlfriend, that you saw the entire murder transpire, right?
Yes.
You then went on to describe to Elaine that you heard Melissa and Freddie arguing. You then entered the room and stated that Freddie, while waving the gun around, shot Melissa in the head accidentally.
Yes.
That's a little different than your direct exam, right?
Yes.
But earlier in your statement to the police, you said that you were asleep and didn't see or hear anything until the gunshot, right?
Yes.
So not only did you lie to the police again, but your stories are becoming very inconsistent, sir. Adding more doubt, you then have a third statement. When confronted about your conversation with Elaine, you changed your story again, right?
Yes.
You said that while speaking to Elaine, you were just being hypothetical. You then go back to your first statement to the police and say that you awoke to a gunshot due to being partially deaf, correct?
Yes.
So, in your first statement, you woke up to a gunshot. In your second statement, you saw the entire murder transpire. And then for your third and final statement, you go back and change your story again. Now, just moments ago, you added more confusion. You stated that you not only saw the entire murder transpire again, but you added that Freddie aimed and shot Melissa intentionally, right?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson, you'd agree with me that you've given 3, if not 4, different statements of what happened that morning, right?
Yes.
What we know for a fact is that you were there, present, when Melissa Payne was murdered. In the first statement, you never saw my client at the scene. It wasn't until later that you decided to add him to the scene. You'd agree with me, wouldn't you, that you've given all these statements, which by doing that gives one doubt about which of your versions are true, right?
Yes.
No further questions.
Good morning. The people call their next witness. To start out today, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the court?
Peggy Payne, P-A-I-N.
I know that this is probably going to be very difficult for you, so if you need a break, please let me know at any time. Peggy, how do you know the victim?
She's my daughter.
Do you know the victim's name? If so, could you state it for the court?
Melissa Payne.
Did the victim live with you? If yes, could you tell the court the address of the home?
She did live with me. The address is 128 East Grant Street, Stroudsburg, Colorado.
Do you remember Melissa coming home the night of May 10th, 2009? Tell me about that.
I do. Melissa came home that night with Vernon in her Jeep.
Do you know approximately what time it was?
Sometime around 11 p.m.
And at this point, did you see Vernon's car at all?
I did not.
At some point, Vernon and Melissa did come inside, correct?
They did come inside and they went into the basement apartment where Melissa lived.
And then did you go to bed after you saw them come inside?
I did.
In the morning, did you hear strange noises coming from outside your home?
Yes.
When you heard the door rattle and the porch creaking, what did you then do?
I went downstairs to see what was going on, and I looked outside and saw a green Ford Taurus with the hood up, but I didn't see anybody around.
And at this point, did you then go back to bed?
I did.
Do you remember if you locked the door?
I did not lock the door.
What do you remember hearing next?
I heard the door open, but I didn't think anything of it because I knew the screen door was still shut, so I went back to sleep.
After going back to sleep, what then did you wake up to next?
I woke up to 2 loud booms and a door slam.
What did those booms sound like to you?
They sounded like gunshots.
And have you heard gunshots before?
I have.
Can you describe the booms in detail?
They were really loud. They kind of rattled the whole house as if they were coming from inside the home. They were pretty close to each other. There wasn't a loud pause in between them.
And then what did you do at this point?
I got out of bed and I went to the window, and outside in the driveway, I saw Vernon. He was pacing, and he looked really upset.
What was he wearing?
He was only wearing his tidy whities.
And was that green Ford Taurus you mentioned earlier in the morning still in the driveway?
No, it was gone.
Did you then talk to Vernon?
I did.
How did he seem to you?
He seemed really upset. He was talking very quickly.
What did Vernon then tell you?
He told me to call 911, that Melissa was bleeding very badly.
Did you then go to the basement where Vernon and Melissa had spent the night?
I did.
And then what did you find there?
I found my daughter lying face down on the floor, and there was a lot of blood coming from her head.
What was the date of Melissa's death that you can recall?
It was Sunday, May 11th, 2009.
And what was Sunday, May 11th's significance?
That day was Mother's Day.
And what plans did you and Melissa have to spend together on Mother's Day?
We were going to go out to dinner to celebrate, but instead she passed away.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Payne. I'm Madison Leader, and I wanted to ask you a few further questions. But first, I wanted to start off by saying I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
So you stated that Melissa came home with Vernon Johnson around 11 p.m. on the night of May 10th, correct?
It was May 11th. Or, sorry, May 10th. Yes, the night of May 10th.
Melissa and Vernon came back to the house in Melissa's car, right?
Correct.
You said you heard loud music coming from the car?
Yes.
When they came inside, they told you they were just stargazing, right?
Yep.
So let me get this clear. Both Melissa and Vernon came inside and went into the basement?
Yes.
There's only one bed in the basement, isn't that right?
Correct.
And with that being said, Vernon stayed the night in your basement with Melissa?
Yes.
During the prosecution opening statement, they spoke about Vernon and Melissa having sleepovers. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Well, this night was one of their many sleepovers, right?
Correct, yeah.
So just to clarify, they had many sleepovers together, right?
They did, yes.
With this being said, they also said that Melissa and Vernon were lovers. Is that true?
Sure, yes.
Are you aware that Vernon Johnson is a married man?
I was not aware.
So after Melissa and Vernon went into the basement, you just went to bed?
I did.
You said you woke up to a creaking sound on the porch?
Yes.
And you said someone was rattling the front door?
Yep, that's what I heard.
The door was locked when you heard the door rattling, wasn't it?
It was locked, yes.
Did you hear from Tanya at all that morning?
No, I did not.
Wouldn't you have wanted to hear from Tanya if your daughter Melissa was being threatened?
I would have wanted to hear from Tanya, yes.
So you heard over the course of this investigation, and you came to learn that Tanya told Freddie exactly where Melissa was?
I did not learn that, no, just now I am.
Okay. If that really happened, wouldn't you have expected your daughter to pick up the phone and call you if Mr. Hernandez was really on his way over to your house to potentially harm Melissa?
Yes.
Or don't you think Tanya would have gotten into the car and drove a few streets over just to your house to make sure everything was okay if Freddie truly came over that morning?
I would have hoped that she would have done that.
So you went downstairs because you had a bad feeling, right?
Correct.
So since you had a bad feeling, you opened and unlocked the front door?
Yes.
When you went downstairs, you saw Vernon's wife's Ford Taurus, correct?
Yes,
You did not see anyone at the front door when you opened it?
I did not.
After unlocking the front door, you went back to bed upstairs, right?
Correct.
So when you have a bad feeling about something outside of your home, you leave the front door unlocked?
I guess I did. It was a mistake.
After you went back upstairs, you heard 2 loud bangs, right?
Yes,
After the 2 loud bangs, you sprang up and went to look out the window?
yes,
You did not see the Ford Taurus at this point, but you did see Vernon Johnson, correct?
yes,
So the first person you see after the 2 loud bangs was Vernon?
yes,
Vernon did not have any clothes on except for his tighty-whities when you saw him, correct?
that's correct.
Vernon was yelling at you to call 911 when he was holding his phone in his hand, right?
Yes,
Besides Melissa, Vernon was the only person you saw that morning?
correct. The only person.
One more question just to be clear. You never saw Freddie Hernandez on the morning of May 11th, correct?
Correct, I did not.
No further questions to the witness, Your Honor.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Detective Chris Garner, Garner.
Where do you work?
The Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department,
What unit are you assigned to?
the Major Crimes Unit.
Were you the lead investigator on a shooting that was reported May 11th, 2009 at 7:17 a.m.?
Yes.
Where did that shooting take place?
128 East Grant Street, Strasburg, Colorado.
What officers were dispatched to the scene?
Deputy Michaels.
What did he see when he was at the scene?
He saw that a victim had a gunshot wound to the head and CPR was being performed, but the victim had no pulse. The victim's family members were found in the dining room who advised that the victim was Melissa Payne,
What is the relationship between Tanya and Melissa Payne?
their sisters.
How did your investigation lead you to Freddie Hernandez?
Well, Tanya had told us that Freddie had come to her house that morning looking for Melissa and that he was acting strange. He was also driving a green Ford Taurus, the same one that was found at the scene. And Tanya said that he had previously made threats to Melissa about her relationship with Vernon, such as he would kill her if he found her with Vernon.
Can you describe the relationship a little more between Melissa and Freddie?
The relationship was pretty strained and they had gotten into quite a few arguments.
Did you interview Vernon?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little about the relationship between Vernon and Melissa?
They had been believed to be in a romantic relationship.
Were they ever together?
Yes, they were together at Melissa's house the night prior to the shooting.
What did Vernon tell you about the shooting?
At the time, he had told me that he had awoken to a loud gunshot noise.
Who is Sarah Jenkins and what did she tell you?
Sarah Jenkins is Freddie's sister. She told us that the day prior to the shooting, she had seen Freddie carrying a heavy object in a knit hat that looked like a gun.
Were the tire marks at the house examined?
Yes.
What was the conclusion?
That the tire marks found at the crime scene had the same characteristics as the green Ford Taurus belonging to Freddie.
Did you review the coroner's report done by Dr. Michael Doberson?
Yes.
What did it include about the cause of death?
A blunt impact to the head and a gunshot wound.
What type of bullet was found in the body?
A 9mm Smith & Wesson.
Did you search the car?
Yes, we searched the car of Freddie.
What did you find in it?
We found 5 unused rounds of 9mm Smith & Wesson ammunition that were the same make and type as the bullet found during the autopsy.
Was the gun ever found?
No.
Can you tell me a little bit about GSR testing?
GSR testing is gun residue testing, and this was tested on Vernon, and the results came back negative, meaning that he could not have been holding the gun.
I have no further questions.
Hello, can you please state your name for the record?
Detective Chris Garner.
Good afternoon, Investigator Garner. I'm Kate Pangburn, and I'll have a few questions for you today. Are you a detective with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And were you lead detective on Melissa Payne's case?
Yes.
Would you say that it's important for a detective to do their best work?
Yes.
And wouldn't you think that in order to prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt, you should get rid of all other possible suspects?
Yes.
And that would include interviewing everybody at the scene of the crime, correct?
Yes.
Were both the victim's mother and father at the house the night of the murder?
Yes.
And is it true that you did not interview the father of the victim?
Yes.
So you failed to interview someone who was present at the scene of the murder?
Yes.
So you have absolutely no idea what her father saw that night?
We didn't interview him because he didn't seem like a prime suspect.
Okay. And did you interview the owner of the Ford Taurus?
Yes.
And are you aware that the Ford Taurus belongs to Faith Monet?
Yes, but she was not at the scene of the crime. Therefore, the other owners of a green Ford Taurus, Vernon and Freddie, were interviewed.
But wouldn't you think that someone with a possible motive should be a prime suspect?
There was no obvious possible motive.
Well,
for
it
Faith.
is her husband sleeping with Melissa, correct?
No.
Isn't Vernon married to Faith Monet?
That did not appear in our report.
I'm pretty sure in the fact pattern, the car belongs to Faith Monet, which is Vernon's wife, correct?
Not correct. That's not in my report. All I have is the car belonged to a Faith Monet. It does not lead her any connection to Vernon.
Well, she's related. She's married to him, and she's the only other one who knows how to start the car, and that's how Vernon and Freddie know how to start it, because it is her car.
Okay.
I think. And then you also said that the tire marks found at the scene have the same class characteristics as the Ford Taurus, correct?
Yes.
But in the fact pattern, it also says there was insufficient individual characteristics to definitely say that the marks were from the Taurus, correct?
Yes, the marks were not definitely from that Ford Taurus, but they matched the same characteristics, meaning they were possibly from that Ford Taurus.
And in your training, you also learned that it's important to gather all possible evidence, correct?
Yes.
And in your direct exam, you said that you GSR tested on Vernon's hands.
Yes.
And the test came back negative.
Yes.
And are you aware that gunshot residue can be washed off?
Yes, but it can also be found on clothing or in the hair or anything on their body.
Do you know where Vernon's clothing was that night?
No.
So you didn't gunshot residue test his clothing? Because in Peggy's statement, she says Vernon was found running outside in his underwear, and there was no clothing found.
Right, okay, sorry. My statement was incorrect. He was tested for gunshot residue on his body.
Okay, but do you know where Vernon was in the 40 minutes between the murder and when the police arrived and tested him?
He was found at Melissa Payne's house.
But don't you think 40 minutes would be plenty of time to allow Vernon to wash his hands free of gunshot residue?
Yes, but the gunshot residue can also be found on other parts of the body.
Okay. And An earlier statement, you said that 9mm bullets found on the scene matched the ones in the Taurus, correct?
Yes.
But did you ever fingerprint test them?
No.
So you don't have any idea who the bullets in the Taurus actually could have belonged to?
We believe they belonged to Freddie Hernandez, the defendant, because they were found in his car.
But the car belonged to Faith Monet, correct?
But the car also belonged, like Freddie and Vernon also owned the car as well.
But you can't be sure if the bullets were 100% belonging to him, right?
No.
Okay. And you also stated that a gun was never found, correct?
Correct.
And at no point in your investigation did you interview anyone who actually saw a gun, correct?
False. Vernon claims that he saw the gun.
But Vernon also made 3 different statements, correct?
He made 2 different statements. He told me a different story than what he told Elaine, but we believe that's because he was afraid the defendant would do something based on past threats if he had told the police that the defendant had shot the victim.
But how can you be sure which story is the right one if he told multiple different ones?
Based off evidence that consistently correlates with his story to Elaine, so that is the one we are basing our trial off of.
Okay. And in your direct exam, you said that Sarah Jenkins said she thought what appeared to be a gun in a knit cap.
Yes.
But there was no way that it could be like this, she could be sure because she did not see it, correct?
Correct.
Do you know who Sarah Jenkins is?
Yes, she is Freddie's sister.
And are you aware that it was actually Elaine Black who gave the statement of the gun and not Sarah
Yes.
Jenkins?
That was my own fault. I misread the information, but it is in fact Elaine who saw the gun-shaped object.
And don't you think that it is lousy investigation work to not know the names of the people involved?
No, because I do know the names. It was just misreading mistake. But after re-looking over my case, I realized my mistake.
Okay, thank you. And I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is T. Pinkham. I'll be direct examining Ms. Black. Hello, Ms. Black. Could you please state your name for the jury?
Elaine Black.
Thank you. Could you please describe your situation prior to the incident?
I had just given birth.
On your way home from the hospital, was there anything unusual?
Yeah, Freddie put something that was in the shape of a gun, something that looked like a gun, in my bag. It was like covered in a hat.
Did you ever check to see what it was?
I did not.
Did you ever feel what it was?
No.
Did you ever see what it was?
No.
So, do you know for sure what the object was?
No.
Could we assume that it could have been anything?
Yes.
How is Freddie as a husband?
He's good. I've caught him cheating though a few times.
Was there an incident in particular?
I caught him cheating on me with Melissa.
How did you find out?
I called her off of his phone, and she said that they were in fact dating, but he said otherwise.
Did you believe him?
No.
Did you believe her?
I wasn't really sure what to believe. I mean, it could have gone both ways, I guess.
Do you think he was cheating on you when you were pregnant?
Yes.
Do you think he went to see her during your contractions?
He could have.
How does that make you feel, knowing that your husband was cheating on you?
It makes me feel angry, upset.
How upset?
I mean, it's frustrating.
Would you ever do anything about it?
No.
Frustrating enough to do something?
I mean, I would call her out on it like I did on the phone, but I don't know if I'd go any farther than that.
How is the baby, Miss Black?
Good.
When was she born?
May 8th.
How many days before the incident would that be?
That would be 3.
How many days before the incident were you released from the hospital?
I was released the day before on May 10th.
Just to clarify, you were released one day before the incident.
Correct.
Did the detective ever interview you?
No.
Did he ever ask you any questions?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Elaine, can you please identify the defendant, Freddie Hernandez?
He's seated at my table to a right wearing a suit and tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant subject to cross. Elaine, you just had a baby a few days prior to Melissa Payne's murder on May 11th, right?
Yes, correct.
Congratulations. And you were released from the hospital after giving birth on May 10th, right?
Yes.
So this would be the night before Melissa was murdered?
Correct.
When you left the hospital, did Freddie Hernandez pick you up?
Yes.
And when he picked you up, did he pick you up in a green Ford Taurus?
Yes.
Elaine, you told investigator Gardner that this car belonged to Freddie's friend Vernon Johnston, right?
Correct. Yep.
And didn't you also tell him that Freddie often drove this car, like that was pretty normal?
Yeah, it was normal.
Okay. Elaine, have you ever driven this car?
No, I don't know how.
And you told investigator Gardner that only Freddie and Vernon know how to drive the green Ford Taurus. Is that true?
Yes.
And this is because it's like very complicated. They have to do something under the hood to start it.
Yep.
So the same day, you witnessed Freddie place something into your bag.
Yes.
This object was it wrapped in something?
It was in a hat, like a knit cap.
And was it pretty heavy?
Yeah, it was.
And you believed this object was a gun, didn't you?
Yes.
And this did all happen on May 10th, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Which was just one day before Melissa was shot and killed, wasn't it?
Correct.
Now, a day later, on the day of the murder, Freddie took this object out of your bag, didn't he?
Yes.
And you said that was at around 2 a.m.?
Mm-hmm.
So Freddie took what you believed to be a gun out of your bag approximately 5 hours before Melissa Payne is shot and killed, right?
Yes.
Freddie then left your apartment, didn't he?
Yep.
And he returned at, you said it was like 8:30 a.m., right?
Yeah, in the morning.
Right. And leading up to this, did you notice like any unusual behavior coming from Freddie?
He was kind of being quiet. Something did seem off. He just didn't seem like himself.
And then a few days like leading up to it, you also mentioned that you hadn't seen Vernon, which was pretty abnormal because him and Freddie were together a lot, right?
Yes.
And so, as you said earlier, that quiet, unnormal behavior continued the morning he came home on May 11th, didn't it?
Yes.
When he came home, did he tell you that he had been at the Cube?
Yes.
And the Cube is a bar located in Denver, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that he normally goes to.
Right, and it's a bar that Freddie often found girls to cheat with, didn't he?
Yes.
Now, that morning when Freddie returned home, he did something important. He immediately went and washed his clothes. Is that true?
Yes.
You believe that this was because he wanted to wash the smell of perfume out of his clothes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would frequently do that when he came home.
And you remember this because Freddie was never, ever afraid of being caught cheating, right?
Yeah.
But the man who was never, ever afraid of being caught cheating immediately started washing the smell of perfume out of his clothes when he came home.
Correct.
Elaine, did Freddie leave your apartment again around 2:30 p.m. on May 11th?
Yes.
When he left, did he leave to go buy something?
Yeah, he said he was getting Pepto.
And did Freddie explain to you why he was getting Pepto?
He said that he was nervous of getting caught.
At this moment, did you believe Freddie thought he was going to get busted by one of his lady friends, catching him cheating on them with you?
Yeah.
So the man who never ever cares about getting caught cheating is now worried about getting caught. So worried, in fact, that he gets physically sick.
Yeah, I think that that's because he's just trying to be a better father, and I think that his emotions were just running high.
Right, but the first time he's getting worried about being caught cheating happens to also be the same day that Melissa Payne was murdered. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
And as you just said earlier, you thought that Freddie was a changing man, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, you once called Melissa Payne on Freddie's phone and found out he was still dating Melissa, right?
Yes.
But Freddie had told you that they had broken up, didn't he?
Yes.
So, Elaine, that means Freddie lied to you, right?
Yes.
Elaine, you told investigator Garner that there's no way Freddie intended to kill Melissa, that he's a gentle, caring, and loving man who would never harm a soul. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
You even got emotional about it, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So you believed Freddie would never ever harm a soul, but you also believed he had a gun.
Yes.
You say Freddie was a caring man, but he's a caring man who lied to you, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Most importantly, Elaine, you say Freddie is a loving man, but he's a loving man who often cheats on you, doesn't he?
Yes.
Thank you for your time, Miss Black. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shauna Warner, and I have some questions for you today. Please state your name to the jury.
Everall Palmer.
And how do you know the defendant?
Freddie and I are good friends.
How long have you two been friends for?
Since we were kids.
And do you have reason to be loyal to Freddie?
Yeah.
And why is that?
He saved me from drowning in a lake when I was 12.
Are you loyal enough to lie under oath?
No.
Where were you the night prior to the murder of Melissa Payne?
I was at a club called The Cube.
Are you the owner of The Cube?
Yes.
And were you there alone?
No.
Who else was there with you?
Freddie.
Does he come to The Cube often?
Yeah, he comes and drinks pretty frequently.
And did he arrive alone?
Yes.
And what was he doing all night?
Drinking heavily and womanizing.
What was he drinking?
Whiskey.
And were you with him all night?
Yeah, he stayed at the club drinking all night, and then he crashed there like he does all the time.
And was he still there in the morning when you woke up?
Yeah, he was sleeping at the bar in his usual spot.
And what time did you both leave The Cube?
About 7 a.m.
Do you wear a watch?
No.
And how did you know what time it was?
The sun was up and it was warm outside.
And did you both leave in the same car?
No.
What car did Freddie leave in?
Vernon's green Ford Taurus.
Is that the same car he arrived in the night prior?
Yeah.
And where is The Cube located?
Larimer Street in Denver.
And how far is that from Strasburg?
About 45 minutes.
And did Freddie tell you where he was going?
Yeah, to see him and Elaine's new baby.
And did you hear from him later after he left?
Yes, he called me later that day.
What time did he call?
Around noon.
And what did he say?
He said he was in trouble and asked me to pick him up.
Trouble? Does that surprise you?
No, Freddie's always getting drunk at the Cube, and especially with the new baby, I figured Elaine was pretty mad at him.
And where did you pick him up from?
At a Safeway near Elaine's apartment.
What time did you pick him up?
About 1:30.
And where did you drop him off?
Colfax and Chambers.
Did he say where he was going?
Yeah, he said he was going to the country.
And did you hear from him after he left?
No.
Did that surprise you?
Not really. I figured that Elaine was just really pissed at him.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. No further questions.
Good morning, Mr. Palmer. I want to start by asking you some questions about your relationship with the defendant. But first, you work at a bar, right?
That's correct.
This bar is called The Cube, and you are the owner, correct?
Yes.
Now, you are close friends with the defendant, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've known him for years?
Yeah.
And he comes to your bar frequently?
Yes.
So let's talk about the night of May 10th. Freddie supposedly arrived at your bar at midnight, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Driving the green Ford Taurus?
Yes.
And he was drinking whiskey heavily, correct?
Yeah.
And according to your witness statement, he was there the whole night. Is that still true?
Yes.
So therefore, at 2 a.m., he was theoretically asleep at your bar. Is that true?
Yeah. It is.
What about at 6 a.m.? Was he still there?
Yeah.
Freddie supposedly left when the sun was up and it was warm, and was able to drive with ease despite the heavy drinking the night prior, correct?
Yes.
And you don't wear a watch, so you were not exact on the time. Is that still true?
Yes, but the sun was up and it was warm out, so I figured it was around 7.
Okay. Did he drive the green Ford Taurus?
Yes.
Let's skip a few hours later. Freddie called you around noon, saying that he was in trouble, correct?
Yes.
Freddie also asked you to pick him up near Elaine's apartment. Is that true?
Yeah.
You claim to have picked Freddie up at 1:30 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And you drove him to Colfax and Chambers and left Freddie there, correct?
Yes.
Freddie told you that he was, quote, going to the country. Is that still true?
Yes.
And you never heard from him after that?
I have not heard from him.
Even though the two of you are such good friends?
That's correct.
Such good friends that you would, quote, do anything for him?
That is also correct.
Thank you. No further questions.